Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny. Welcome back. This is another edition of the Yak With MAC, but I'm flying solo today, and that's okay. I wanted to do a special edition from the last 3 guests that I've had. All of my guests have been phenomenal. Liz, Desmond, Patrick, Michael, Marvin. And I should have thought of this earlier, but for the last 3 guests that I've had, I wanted to do a quick recap show. And really, I want you to personalize some of the things that they said. I'm going to restate some of the things they said, but I'm going to try to make it personal for you as the leader out there. But first, let me talk about this. Leader Ready. Leaders, have you gone? Are you registered? Leader Ready is huge. Leaders, are you taking at least 15 minutes a day to develop yourself? 15 minutes a day to develop yourself. That's all I'm asking for right now. 15 minutes a day to do something. Watch this podcast. Get an article. Do something that's going to develop you. You have to worry about you, because how can you be a great influential leader? This is the place. This is the place that we want you to come to get inspired, to get encouraged, to be that great, inspirational, and influential leader that we all know that you can be. One other quick announcement. I didn't realize this, but we actually have a Learning Podcast Slack channel. So if you want to be part of that, I'm going to be starting conversations in there. I've invited a few people in. If you want to be invited to that Slack channel, just hit me up anywhere in any one of the other channels. I'll post a message out there when I post this podcast, and we'll add you to that Slack channel. We can start conversations about leadership, because that's what it's all about. Okay. So I got to interview Robin Plimpton. Robin is the senior training manager for the Northeast and the Great Lakes. And there were some points that I just want to recap that she made. She made a lot of great points. I'm just going to talk about 3 or 4 of them. So one thing she talked about is identifying gaps, and that's what leads to innovation. Now, she was very skeptical to talk about it, but Robin was one of the pioneers of us having learning centers throughout the country, virtual classroom learning centers throughout the country. And that came by identifying gaps. So when it comes to innovation, think about you leaders out there. If there's something that is a gap that is causing you not to perform at your best, causing your group, your store, your district, your area to not perform at your best, the first thing to do is to sit down and really identify what that gap is. Once you have that gap identified, then you can innovate. Then you can say, well, this has never been tried before. Let me try this, right? We're still a very entrepreneurial company. There's still a lot of room for innovation. There's still a lot of room for ideas. So she talked about identifying those gaps and then innovating to close that gap, seeing what that need is and filling that need. So hopefully you personalize that, leaders. Robin talked about this. She said every stumble is a learning opportunity. Every time you have an off month, every time something doesn't go the way you thought it would go, take it as a learning opportunity. Look for the lessons in that. You have a month that just was way off. Hey, what did we do? What can we learn from this month? You could waste time. I think it's a waste of time beating yourself up, or you can use that time productively and say, what happened? What can I do differently this coming month? Robin talked about seeking feedback the right way. And I want to recap that, because I think all of us genuinely like to seek feedback, whether it's an interview, presentation that we did, something. We always ask, hey, how did I do? But she talked about a very specific process. First, let the person know beforehand that you're going to be seeking feedback, and then give them some time to process it. Because a lot of times it's like right after the interview, if we have an interview, right after the interview, hey, how did I do? We'll send an email like 2 minutes later. Let them know, hey, is it okay if I seek feedback beforehand? And then give it a day. Give it a day or so. And then ask. Because then the person has gathered their thoughts, they have their notes, whatever they need to do. And they can give you more in-depth and retrospective feedback. So personalize that one too. Robin talked about some things that she has done daily, and we talked, I guess it's 2 or 3 weeks ago, so we were kind of in the middle of February, And she set out some goals for diet, for exercise that she has stuck to so far. So personalize that, reevaluate. At the beginning of the year, did you set some goals for yourself? Whether it was health-wise, eating-wise, exercising more, getting rid of that COVID weight, any of those things. If you did them, go reevaluate and see if you've stuck to that. So that was Robin Plimpton, just a phenomenal leader with some great advice, tips for leaders out there. I got to speak with Simeon Booker. Simeon is a district manager in the Bronx, New York, Boogie Down. And he's also the co-chair of the Black Empowerment Network. And the first thing that we talked about with Simeon, one of the first things we talked about was his grandfather and the leadership that his grandfather showed in the Emmett Till case back in 1955. The first book that Simeon's grandfather wrote was called Shocking the Conscious. And we really talked about the leadership that it took for Simeon Booker to actually go ahead and publish that photograph, first in Jet magazine and then nationally. And it really shocked the nation. It was one of those moments where we realized, this lynching thing is not okay. It shouldn't be normal. It shouldn't be part of our DNA. It took a lot of courage and leadership for him to do that. And I said this, Simeon didn't, because he's just, he's too humble to say this. But I know that lineage runs through him and has helped make him the great leader that he is. Simeon then really got into some leadership stuff, and he talked about the craft of leadership. I love how he put that. So leadership is a craft. It's something that you should work on every single day. Just like if you're a good artist, if you're a good singer, if you're a good baseball player, you work on that craft every single day. And he talked about how leaders lose track of that and should be working on that craft every day. Are you doing that? Personalize that. Personalize that. He said you should be a student of the craft at all times and be able to play different roles. So at times you have to be a teacher, at times you have to be a coach, at times you have to manage, but you should also spend a lot of time still being a student, looking at other more experienced leaders, other successful leaders out there, and really learning and having conversations from them. Personalize and own that. So when it comes to moving up and being able to go for different positions, Simeon was very specific. He talked about you have to sell yourself first, but you want to do that at every single level. And I think that was such an important point. I know as leaders, at times we really just want to impress our immediate boss. And maybe impress is not the right word, but I think you know what I mean. He felt like, hey, get buy-in at every level. At the folks that are working for you, at peers, at your immediate manager, your manager's manager, your manager's manager's manager. Get their buy-in to what your brand is as well. Does that resonate with any of you? Personalize that one. Simeon did a great job at really talking about the art, the craft of leadership. Then we got to speak to Amanda Moss. Amanda Moss is a senior talent development partner, and she supports the nation, but she mostly supports the consumer leaders. And she talked about something called removing the roadblocks. So that's exactly how she put it. And she said that sometimes leaders will run into roadblocks, but they don't realize that everything that they need is already inside of them. I thought that was so inspirational. Leaders, let's personalize that one. Is everything that you need already inside of you? So how do you pull it out? You've got to do some reflection. You've got to have some conversations. If everything you need to be successful is already inside of you, what's it still doing in there? It's got to come out. I love the way Amanda put that. Amanda talked a lot about a growth mindset. If you remember her story about how she was an executive administrative assistant with the company, but she really wanted to go into leadership. So she juggled family. She took classes at night. She juggled what was a pretty good job that she already had, but she really wanted to do something else. She had this growth mindset that she wanted to continue to grow, not only personally, but with the company. And this was her dream job, to get into this type of leadership role where she's actually coaching and helping leaders come to great decisions, right? So I thought that was great. She also talked about having the courage to take risk. So tying that in with all three have really talked about being innovative and having the courage to take risk. Again, you think about Simeon Booker, the first Simeon Booker, and the courage to take the risk that he did. I'm going to publish this horrible photograph because I really want our country to see what this does to a family, what this did to this 15-year-old boy. And so Amanda kind of reiterating that and saying, it's okay to fail. Let me say that again. It's okay to fail. Personalize that for a few minutes. It's okay to fail because you're going to be better in the long run as long as you still have that growth mindset that you want to continue to move forward and grow. Finally, the last thing that I captured, there's a lot of other things that all three of these great leaders shared with me and shared with you guys. But the final thing that I captured from Amanda that stood out for me is when I asked her about what does she do daily, she talked about daily reflection. I love that. And I didn't prod her on or anything. So daily reflection, and if you remember, she said that's how she gets better because she goes back through conversations that she had during that day. And she starts to think, hey, did I say that right? Did I offend that person? Did I really nail that conversation? If I didn't, now that's how she makes her list out, her to-do list for the following day. I thought that was brilliant. And hey, I'm going to get back with this person and this person first thing in the morning tomorrow because I just didn't like the way that conversation left off. I thought that was tremendous advice. And it speaks to daily reflection, right? But it also speaks to setting up your next day because you as a leader, you're very busy. You need to have a plan every single day. And so personalize that. What does that mean to you? Personalize everything that these three great leaders talked about. If you haven't already, go back on our webpage on the Learning Podcast, the Yak with Mac. All of my podcasts are still out there. So go back and watch Liz, Mike Yowell, Marvin Sanchez. If for some reason you can't find it, I'll send it to you. Patrick, Desmond, they all just shared some outstanding things. So I'll commit that once a month, I'll do a recap podcast like this so that you can kind of capture all those nuggets in one place. And it'll be my reminder to you to own it for you and to personalize it for you. All right, enough. I've got another great leader that I'm interviewing next week. Can't wait to get that out to you. But for now, this is Kenny with the Yak with Mac. We will talk to you next week.